crime, cases, and backing the blue. Now, here are your hosts, Captain Ed Mehmet and Detective Kevin Schroeder.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cop Talk. I'm Kevin Schroeder, your host. I'm here with my co-host, Captain Ed Mehmet. Say hello, Ed.
Hello, WABC listeners. Today's guest is prominent, and I worked for his father, who was a wonderful guy and who I love.
So today's guest is Greg Kelly. Greg Kelly has a show here on WABC Radio from 1 to 3 p.m. Monday through Friday. So I'm sure you're already listening to it, but if you haven't listened yet, be sure to listen. Greg, welcome.
Thank you, Kevin. Ed, great to be with you. Wow. Fire away. Okay,
here we go. He's in the hot seat. So, Greg, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about your background, where you grew up, where you went to school, and how you got into journalism?
Sure. Thank you for the question. I grew up in the suburbs of New York City on Long Island, Garden City. My father, Ray Kelly, his wife, Veronica, and my big brother, Jim. We lived in Baldwin, and then we moved to Garden City. Great family life, just lots of laughs and adventure. I would see my dad go off for his Marine Corp duty, and I thought that was the coolest thing in the world, and kind of wanted to be a Marine like him. And I pursued that in college, became affiliated with Officer Candidate School, and I also at college dabbled in the radio station. More than dabbled, I had a full-time job at the radio station, part-time actually. Every morning I was doing the news, very early in the morning. I was intrigued by journalism, and I thought about doing it right after college. But there was something about it that seemed premature. You know, some 22-year-old going around asking public officials questions. I mean, what do you know when you're 22, right out of school? Not that much. I thought it was important to do something else, so I was in the Marine Corps for 9 years active duty. I stayed in for another dozen in the reserves. I was a pilot, flew Harriers. And then I left the service in 2000 and went back to my old idea about pursuing media. My brother suggested it. Like, you know, I think I could do that. I think I would enjoy that. And I sent resumes all over the country. It took about 6 months to find my first job, and I found a really great job anchoring the news and reporting on the news in Binghamton, New York. And morning anchor, and then I would go out and report for the evening show. It was a great setup. My first job, morning anchor, right? But my co-host was a college junior, all right? So this is a pretty small station, and I don't want to say they'd hire anybody, but it was a very good station, and I'm very, very grateful for that break. It was, you know, in a way, my first big break.
Did you go to Fordham University?
I went to Fordham, majored in political science.
Okay, yeah. My son Kevin went to Fordham as well. Great school,
yeah.
Great school. Captain?
When you were growing up, you played the drums, correct?
My dad played the drums.
You know, your dad
a lot.
played the drums.
I mean, I'd go down there and bang on them. You know, I didn't know what I was doing. I certainly never played the drums, but they were in the house. My dad would go down and play the drums, you know, maybe not that often, but, you know, a couple times a month. No matter where you were in the house, you know, he's at it again, you know, bam, 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 bam. He has great rhythm, a great beat, and is good at playing the drums. I picked up the saxophone in, you know, school, the marching band and all that stuff. I played the saxophone, alto and tenor, and I wasn't particularly serious about it, you know, but maybe for a little while I was. But, yeah, there was music in the house. My dad had a great, and mom, you know, just loved music, and especially in the 70s and 80s, there was great music, all genres. And I remember that song, I forgot who, is it Kenny Loggins or Your Mama Don't Dance and Your Daddy Don't Rock and Roll? You ever hear that song?
No.
Mama Don't Dance and Your Daddy.
Absolutely.
I remember it made no sense to me because my mom danced and my dad, you know, was totally cool and playing the drums. So anyway, great times growing up.
Yeah, your mom was a member of the Coast Guard, right?
She was. She became basically a senior enlisted person right off the bat after going through boot camp and this special program. They needed, I think, administrative officers, secretaries, and she qualified. She had to go to boot camp in Yorktown and became a chief petty officer, third class. I forgot what it was. But she'd go off for her weekends of service, often Governor's Island or Yorktown, Virginia, and go away for 2 weeks a year as well. She fired M16s in, boot camp. I mean, it's not Marine Corps boot camp, but it is, a semblance of boot camp, and we're very proud of her. My parents made quite a team.
When I first met her, I said, what a startling resemblance between her and Joanne Woodward, the actress. You recall her? Joanne Woodward. She's married to Paul
Newman, right? Yeah. Why? What did Paul say about that? What's the secret to your longevity or something like that? You've always been faithful. And he said, why go out for hamburger when you have steak at home? You ever hear that one? This is something he said. It sounded very okay. I mean, nothing the meat comparison, but anyway, that's what I know about that relationship.
And your dad once said at a public event that the two best things that ever happened to him was his wife and the Marine Corps, in that order.
Interesting.
I always
I think his sons had a little highlight at least along the way.
Well, whenever I see him, I remind him of that. By the way, you mentioned before about you were a Marine pilot. I was in Marine Aviation, the Marine Corps Reserve, also in aviation, and they were flying the Sky Raiders at the time. It was a VMF 323.
323. Yeah, yes. That squadron still exists.
I know. They flew.
Wait a second. Is that the Snakes, the Rattlers?
Yes.
Death Rattlers?
Yes.
I was in that squadron.
Really?
For about 2 weeks.
Well, when Floyd Bennett Field was a naval air station, they flew out of there. So
wow. I was stashed there. It's like a temporary assignment for 2 weeks in the summer of 1992. How about that?
I'm going back to 1956, 57.
Wow.
What about, you also flew in Iraq, right?
I flew over Iraq in the late 90s, enforcing the no-fly zone. The United Nations, after the first Gulf War, imposed a southern and northern no-fly zone over Iraq, and no Iraqi aircraft could launch, and we patrolled the southern portion of Iraq. 98. It was pretty benign, to be honest. It was. Technically, letter of the law. I think it's logged as a combat mission, but I didn't shoot anybody at anybody. Nobody shot at me. It was wow, we're over Iraq. You know what I mean? But it was a fairly, in a way, routine mission.
Yeah.
But yeah, I deployed to the Persian Gulf, did a lot of flying in Kuwait, over Persian Gulf, Jordan, the rest of it, and very intense flying. Actually, the training flying. The training flying was more intense than the actual operational stuff.
Were you also involved in a crash?
Yes, I was in a mishap in 1999. It's not the greatest day of my life. It's kind of like, I would say, when an officer shoots somebody, it's that level of incident, and it gets investigated, and you're put on desk duty for a little while and that kind of thing, and it's a stressful time. But I survived the crash. Obviously, I did have somewhat of a mild injury. Probably more severe than I realized. I say mild now. A traumatic brain injury, a mild traumatic brain injury, TBI. That's the first time I ever heard that. I had a concussion. And so it took me a couple of months to get back in the cockpit, a couple of months to get the clean bill of health. But I did. And, that was an experience.
This National Foster Care Month, Marine Toys for Tots is providing hope to children who need it most. Staff Sergeant James Caldwell, who grew up in foster care himself, shares that while handing out gifts at a Toys for Tots distribution event, a little girl looked up at him, reached into her bag, pulled out a stuffed animal, and said, "Someone needs to make sure you get a toy too." That simple gesture embodies the heart of Marine Toys for Tots, ensuring every child, including those in foster care, experiences the kindness that can transform their future. Visit toysfortots.org today.
Was it a fact that you couldn't be found for a few days?
No, I think it was a couple. That's not the case. I was found probably in a half hour.
I thought you were missing for a couple of days.
I think what you're getting at, my dad tells this story that my helmet was missing. I got a concussion, and they couldn't find the helmet for a couple of days.
Oh, yeah. But I know he was very stressed over that, like any father would be.
Yeah, no, it was an interesting time, and my dad actually and I believe he's talked about this, had open heart surgery right around the same time.
I remember that.
Yeah, so a lot of things were kind of occurring.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I've never been in the military, but thank you both for your service. Thank you.
No problem. No, I enjoyed it very much. That's the thing. I really liked it, and I appreciate your sentiments, but I don't know, Ed. You know, I mean, the thank you for your service. People didn't, culturally it's done now, and it's very nice, but they didn't do that when you were in, right?
No, not at all.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm very grateful to the government, to be honest, or grateful to the Marine Corps, I should say, for the experience.
Right.
You get to meet incredible people that you would not have met otherwise. You travel all over the place, and you do things that, you know, you can only really do in the military.
Well, you have a station at Cherry Point.
I was.
You know about the toxic water case?
Yeah, I think that was in Lejeune, Camp Lejeune. And so
well, Cherry Point is considered part of Camp Lejeune.
I don't think it's as far as the water supply.
No, it is, because I'm in that. I joined the suit.
Wow. I should probably join it as well, because number one, I actually did some stints at Lejeune, and I was at Cherry Point for a year at least.
Oh, then you qualify. No question.
I qualify, yeah. Well, a lot of things I could qualify for. That 9/11, I was down there for 2 months, breathing all that stuff. I should have.
Are you registered with the program, Greg?
That's a big thing with Kevin.
Oh, yeah, you have to be registered. You have to get registered.
I kept on hearing about it. I feel like I've missed all the dates, deadlines. But I was there just before 7 came down on 9/11. And I actually, strangely enough, a little footnote, I was in New York City that day. The phone rings. I was living in Tudor City. And they say, I was a reporter at New York 1. And it was primary day. I didn't have to be until like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I was sleeping. Phone rings. Greg, do you know what's happening? I said, yeah, I don't have to be until 3. No. The planes have hit the World Trade Center. Come in right away. And I put the phone down. And I looked to the south. My apartment faced south. And I saw the smoke. Turned on the TV. And one of the buildings was coming down. I remember yelling. And then I remember thinking 2 things. We're at war, and nothing will ever be the same. And running out the house, hailing a cab, but it really was borderline chaos in the streets. You know what I mean? It was like, I don't even think I paid the cab driver. Not that it was like, you know what I mean? We were just so swept up in what had happened. And it was like, you know, nobody was thinking along those lines. It was just, I get to the station, I get a camera, they tell me to go to Beekman Downtown Hospital. And I go down there, and nothing's happening, right? At this point, the towers are down. We're awaiting the big casualty arrival, which never happens. So we're like, well, what do we do? And my cameraman, this is sometime in the afternoon, I had a cameraman that day, which is unusual for New York 1. I actually had 2. I said, let's see how close we can get to the site. So we leave the hospital, and we try to go west, and we can't get past Broadway. The police are there, and they say, you can't come through. So I figured we could get through sooner or later. So we try again. We come back 1 block, go south, try again to cross Broadway. Didn't work. We do it again. And then it was a National Guard troop. And he looks at my press pass, which I showed him. And on the press pass, it says NYPD at the top, right? Somehow this guy thought maybe we're law enforcement. I did not say we're law enforcement.
Right.
But I just presented it to him, and he said, NYPD, okay, and he lets us go through. And then, you know, we walk another, not far, 2 blocks, and right by that Trinity Cemetery where Alexander Hamilton is, and the Millennium Hotel, and then I'm at Church and Cortlandt Street, which is the address of the World Trade Center. It's like nuclear winter. I'd never seen anything like it, and it was almost quiet. There was an alarm that kept, but other than that, it was quiet. And it wasn't like there were 5,000, people responding. There were like 2 firefighters on a corner. It was just like, where do you even begin? You know, what's the first move? It was very desolate. And I called the desk with a cell phone. I said, listen, I'm here. I knew we couldn't go live. We had cameras, but I couldn't go live. And And they were like, well, where are you? I said, I'm at Church and Cortlandt Street. I'm right in the middle. Well, what do you mean you're in the middle? Where are you? I said, Church and Cortlandt. I mean, I'm like exactly where the World Trade Center is. It's like, no, I don't understand. Where are you? I said, I'm telling you, I'm in the middle. This is like ground zero. I am at ground zero for this thing. Now, I did not recognize it at the time, obviously. But apparently I'm the first person to use that term, ground zero, for that spot. In that, not that I invented the terms from the atomic age, but I had used the term a week prior on television to describe the mayor's race. All the candidates had been on the steps of City Hall within like 10 minutes of each other. It was like, oh, the mayor's race, City Hall is ground zero in the mayor's race today, because they were all there, which is unusual. 7 candidates having, events on the steps within like 20 minutes of each other. And it's a military term, and I said it. And then, so that. And 7 came down just while I was there. You couldn't see it. You heard this roar. You could not see it. And we started running, not knowing exactly what we were running from. And then it stopped. And I said, okay, let's go back. My crew was pretty freaked out at that point. I thought, danger. It doesn't seem that dangerous. You know what I mean? Like, okay, we're on solid ground. What could go wrong? They were right. I was wrong. There's glass hanging all over the place. We probably shouldn't have been there, but I was. And there's a photograph of me and some video in that spot on that day.
Well, we're going to get you signed up in the World Health Program.
Right after the show.
That would be great, actually. Thank you.
I want to get you signed up for the Camp Lejeune toxic water. Probably.
Yeah. Thank you. I worked at Cherry Point for it. Sorry, give me 1 second. I got there in April of 1995, or February of 95, and I left in May of 96. So I was there for over a year.
Well, I think it's a 20-year time period. I'm not sure, but you have to check the dates. But getting back to things more local, what do you think of what's going on today with the police department?
Well, it's a real shame. The whole national discourse about police and the local fraud that was perpetrated by a lot of folks, media, but especially Bill de Blasio and his successor, Eric Adams, especially de Blasio. When my father left the job as police commissioner, the New York City Police Department had an approval rating of about 70 to 75%. All demographics. Incredibly popular organization. My father's personal approval rating as the police commissioner, having been there for 12 years.
I was just going to say that, 12 years.
It's like 75%. It was astounding. And nobody has that. He was extraordinarily good at his job. Just the right man, magnificent at his job. And that department was well-led, well-trained, well-managed. And crime was effectively fought, terrorism, and you'll notice if you go back and look, the 2002, January 1st, 2002 to December 31st, 2013, race relations in this city were, I think you could use the word harmonious. We had come such a long way. There's so many things I love about Rudy Giuliani, all right? But, let's face it, there were times where he didn't necessarily say things. He said things that, made people upset, right? Especially along the lines of race. And there were some episodes that heightened racial tension. No mayor is perfect. I mentioned this to Rudy himself. One day Rudy, I hope, receives the Presidential Medal of Freedom because he deserves it for his contributions then, but even more so, what he's done for this country since he left that job. So I want to be clear here. I'm not denigrating Rudy Giuliani, but my dad did an amazing job, and so did the department. And then for de Blasio to become mayor in a Democrat primary, he had to do a couple of things, 3 things. First, he had to pretend the police department was broken, pretend that it was racist, pretend that it was all these things. And you could get away with it in New York City running for a primary because he's talking to like 60,000 people can actually make you the mayor. It's crazy. If you're running in a primary, which, oh, by the way, I think is now on the last day of school. They don't want anybody showing up for that primary. Eric Adams, in a city of 8 million people, got, I think, like 200,000 votes. And that made him the mayor? Are you kidding me? In the greatest city in the world? So de Blasio lies to radicals and to a lesser extent the New York Times, people like that who are like ready to turn the page. And, you know, journalism had become what you read on your phone, you know? What you read on your phone. People are not experiencing things anymore. People are going into their silos. So he pretended that the department was broken, and then he gets the job, and then he pretends to fix what wasn't broken, right? And then he actually manages to break it. He actually manages to basically break it. And you know what happened with Black Lives Matter and all that nonsense? Yes. I mean, the lies that have been told and just brought this country so far back, it's terrible. And it's man-made for political reasons.
You know, your father did such a great job during those 12 years that I stopped carrying my pistol off duty. The city was so safe.
Yeah.
I didn't worry about it. Now it's just the opposite.
Yeah.
And another thing, one of his major events, he would go to black churches, and he really smoothed over relations. So it was a wonderful 12 years under him. I don't think we'll ever see that again.
Well, certainly not anytime soon. We will be shortly on our 7th police commissioner since he left. 7 in less than 11 years.
And under Adams, it's 3 in 3 years.
Yeah, well, actually, he'll be on his 4th soon.
Right.
Exactly.
And I wanted to bring out the fact that, what do you think of the commissioner resigning? Do you think he was forced to resign because his statement was he was doing it for the good of the department? I don't believe that.
Well, I met Ed Caban, Commissioner Caban, once. Seemed like a very nice person. I have no personal knowledge of the case. I will say this, and I feel comfortable in saying it, because I think Caban was ill-served by Adams. He picked somebody who was not qualified for that job.
Correct.
He picked a buddy, a crony, if you will, from the middle of the department. You just don't do that. It is a big, complex organization, 30,000 cops, 20,000 civilian employees, something like that. You know, it is a massive bureaucracy in many ways, and you got to know what you're doing. He did not have the administrative chops, the law enforcement chops, the political skill, but he put his buddy in charge. And now I want to say this, though, too, about his situation. I'm getting a little bit tired of the FBI in so many respects. But this publicly taking people's phones, right, and then nothing coming of it for 6 months, a year, 2 years, and then they arrest you, maybe. I mean, it's a form of harassment. I don't think that's professional. I don't think it's ethical, you know. Arrest him or not arrest him. I don't know. I think there's something really crummy about that. And I would not put it past the Biden administration. You know, maybe there's some silly beef, you know, with the Adams administration on immigration or something like that. Not that Adams deserves any credit for anything. Adams helped bring on this situation that we're in. You know, he invited it during his campaign and during the first part of his tenure.
Yeah, when you go against the machine, you know. If you go against the Democratic machine, you know.
But he never really went against the Democratic machine. That's what I point out. I mean, the Democrat machine, the Democrats said sanctuary cities. They were all over that, right? Mm-hmm. Eric campaigned on that. Eric campaigned on this myth of white supremacy, right? He also governed that way. And, you know, New Yorkers will take everybody, right? You know, like that's what we do. And those ludicrous tents in Orchard Beach below sea level, all that nonsense, that's a lot of money. That's contracts. That's, look at me. I'm accommodating these people. So that was a decision. And it wasn't a decision for the good of the city. It was like, this is a moment. How can I get on television tonight? That's what I really, that's as deep as this guy is. There's nothing going on with him. Zero. So back to Caban. I hope he's innocent. You know, I don't think any citizen deserves that, to be honest, to be publicly targeted, you know, and then what? What's the next step? And by the way, this happened to Adams. He gets to keep his job, right? It did. Grant, I don't know if they searched his home, but they probably would have if he wasn't the mayor. Greenwich Village or whatever. I mean, Greenwich, what do you call it? Gracie Mansion. So.
Well, he doesn't live there. He probably lives in New Jersey.
Well, if I were him, I'd take the mansion. I have a feeling he's finally. You can't forget. You can't forget. And I don't understand why people can't say it during the campaign. I have a theory as to why you can't say it, but he gets caught living in New Jersey. Eric Adams is running for mayor, gets caught living in New Jersey. It's a minor story, right? It's like a day and a half story. And quite frankly, one of the reasons why it didn't become a bigger story is because of identity politics. And reporters, mostly white political reporters, did not feel comfortable taking on an African-American candidate. It did not feel comfortable taking on Eric Adams. Interestingly, they really felt comfortable picking on Andrew Yang, who happens to be Asian. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And these things, and I know these people, that's what's happening. It's all about their comfort and where the winds are blowing and this, that, and the, how will I look? And just stupidity. Absolute corruption. It's ludicrous. I don't think anybody should be judged on what they can't control. Their ethnicity, their skin, quite frankly, their orientation, a lot of things. But, you know, I will tell you, a couple of years ago, I started to feel the sting of being judged on the things that I can't control. And you could say I don't know. It was a real wake-up call. You can judge me on a lot of things, but not this stuff. My character, or if you think lack thereof, or ability or lack thereof, fine. But to just walk in the door as a white male and have that be a negative, like, I'm not going to tolerate that. I'm just not going to tolerate that. Granted, when they say we're not hiring, you got to tolerate that. But I'll leave it at that.
Getting on to another area, the protest, the anti-Semitic protest, pro-Hamas. And I know that your wife is Jewish because I've met her. And I would think that there's a connection to your family about that. It disturbs me very much. I have family in Israel, and every Israeli has suffered because it's such a small country. Everybody knows everybody. In fact, 2 of my grandchildren are there. One's in medical school, and one joined the Army. Dual citizenship, he's in the IDF. Can you give us your opinion about these protests?
Well, they're disgusting. Depraved, ignorant people. I'll be generous if they're ignorant, or they're just evil. To be running around, I mean, October 7th, what happened on October 7th, what continues to happen, they're holding hostage children still. And you have people in this country like siding with their captors. It's unthinkable, but it's happening. And it's, my God, and, you know, for somebody like Joe Biden, for campaign and his presidency, hate has no quarter. You know, hate. It's just a code word for Trump, you know. For him to tolerate all this stuff, and there's no serious pushback. I mean, white supremacy in America is a myth. It is a myth. Anti-Semitism is everywhere. It's alive and well. What is 90% of the conversation? White supremacy? Even that has finally died down because they know it's a myth. Now, by the way, white supremacy is ludicrous and stupid, okay? Anybody thinks they're better because of that stuff, but... And if they break the law, you can think that stuff, and if they break the law, that should be they should be dealt with. But it's the anti-Semitism is everywhere, and it's astonishing that people are actually afraid and touchy about bringing it up, and like, you know, how do we? So These are very, very, very strange times.
And you know what's often overlooked is that some of the hostages are American citizens.
True.
In Theodore Roosevelt's time, he would have sent the Marine Corps in to rescue them. And if I were president today, I would use the Marine Corps in any way that they could help the IDF to get to those hostages.
You know, you said Theodore Roosevelt. He may have. Franklin Roosevelt would not have.
No, but Theodore Roosevelt.
Oh, yeah, I know. But Franklin Roosevelt, some of the things that he let happen and how he let them happen. And so you were right. There are 6. Now, I think about that, and somebody asked me, so why aren't we hearing more about those Americans? I had to think about it for a moment. I think part of it is, well, they're dual citizens. You know what I mean? They were there prior. This does not make their plight any more tolerable. But I'm just wondering a little bit, why isn't there more? It wasn't like they were tourists who were captured, right? It wasn't like the American hostages, say, in Tehran, in Iran. But it all should be a bigger story. I have not done nearly enough myself. You know, it's really, really bad. I just go back to October 7th, that they targeted women and children, and that sexual torture is part of their arsenal of weapons, techniques, tactics. And that we should be so almost oblivious to it sometimes.
Well, I think about that creep on the subway car. He said, "Are there any Zionists here?" And he intimidated that guy. You know.
I know.
And that was terrible.
I remember. I thought to myself what I would have done on that subway car. And I don't know the answer, to be honest. I mean, I'm not. It probably would not have been prudent to stand up. You know what I mean? It wouldn't be like, I just want to go home. You know what I mean? Is this the place to make a stand? I mean, no, seriously, do I want to get now? Like, it's very easy to say, I would stand up. You know what I mean? But, and there are times, I will tell you, like, I don't have to prove my bravery anymore. You know, I just have, I told you I flew over Iraq. I was also on the ground in Iraq as a correspondent.
Yes, I remember that.
Although, then again, you kind of have to prove your bravery if you're ever in a situation. It doesn't matter what you did yesterday or the day before. It's funny you mentioned that video. I looked at it. Nobody was being harmed, right? Nobody was being harmed. I mean, he was saying ugly, awful things, and it was an intimidation thing. But, you know, do I react and get into a conversation with somebody who comes through the subway car, you know, hello, everybody, my name is, and they tell me their tale of woe? I don't necessarily... You know, I pretend I don't see them, and I just... Now, there is a time and place to get involved in charity. And I always have my eyes open peripherally, to be honest, to see what is going on there. Sorry, but it's another topic.
You know, Greg, last 2 months, 2 attempts on President Trump's life, 2 assassination attempts. What's your thoughts?
Well... It's very, very scary right now where this country is. And when I say the country, I'm actually talking about Democrat political leaders. Maybe I shouldn't say the country. I'm talking about Joe Biden, Liz Cheney, Chuck Schumer, a guy named Judge Ludig, Michael Ludig, calls himself a conservative, but he was a star January 6th witness against Trump. These people have said, out loud, Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. He's a threat to the Constitution. Liz Cheney has said several times, he's a threat to the Constitution. Now, if you believe that, and Liz Cheney wrote a book called Oath and Honor, the oath that many officers take, military and officers of the country, is I will support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I will support and defend the Constitution, which is great. But they have now whipped themselves up into this mindset that Donald Trump is a threat to the Constitution. Now, if you believe that and you took an oath, I think they are putting themselves in a position where they're basically authorizing, potentially even the government, to kill Donald Trump. Because, you know, well, people say, well, Donald Trump speaks, you know, pretty tough too. Nothing like this. Even even the enemy of the people, right? Enemy of the people. Like, okay, the media are the enemy of the people, which I happen to agree with, okay? What is the remedy for that? The remedy is turning them off, turning away, alternative media, right? What do you do? Like there's no constitutional remedy for that, and we're not looking for one, right? It's a complaint. But there is a remedy, or actually a call to action. There's a duty. Support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Well, you have to defend the Constitution from domestic enemies. If they believe Donald Trump is an enemy of the Constitution, and they believe that, Judge Ludig, who I mentioned, said Donald Trump and his supporters are a clear and present danger to American democracy. It's exactly what he said publicly at a January 6th hearing. If you look up the phrase clear and present danger, it goes back to World War I in a Supreme Court case, and basically it means you can break the law. You can suspend parts of the Constitution to eliminate the threat. We're in a clear and present danger now? Okay, the law takes a second place position as we deal with this. And I noticed when Ludig said that, maybe find that clip, but he takes him a long time to say it. He's a strange guy, and he chooses his words carefully, but there's a huge pause. Almost like he recognizes the gravity of what he's about to say, and that he is giving a green light to the assassination of President Trump. So that's what there's that. Very quickly, I mean, the Secret Service, I mean, come on, Butler, there had to be complicity. And the director of the Secret Service, guess what? Worked for Liz Cheney. Worked for the Cheneys for 5 years. Kimberly Cheadle. Did Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney sit her down one day and say, you know, you took an oath to support and defend the Constitution, right? You know what that means? I could totally see that happening. It's completely plausible. And then they'll say, well, somebody said, oh, conspiracy theories. Shut up about the conspiracy theories. Don't call my critical thinking that everybody should be kind of engaged in a conspiracy theory. That's their way out. Yeah.
Well said. Greg, if you were mayor today, what would you do different? I'm sure a lot of things, but let's speak about a few.
Well, I'd make an appointment with my dad, and we'd interview him for the police commissioner job.
Right on. I like
Just
it.
ask him, give him some, tell me about yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Right on. You're hired.
What makes you think that you could be a good police commissioner? Okay, I'll get back to you.
Yeah.
We'll let you know.
Exactly.
Thanks for coming down. I would hire him immediately.
I hear you.
And I think you would have to also consider setting up a new incarceration facilities. You would have to start enforcing quality of life violations aggressively. You have to back the police in doing it. I mean, like we've never seen before. We'd also have to start ticketing bicycles.
I agree with that one.
And making sure that they're all licensed. I mean, maybe okay, you got the lanes here, all right? You're driving all over the street, and you're going through intersections. You're going backwards. You're like, who are you people? I mean, now this is obviously far easier said than done, and there would be a massive pushback. But you know what? And probably violence. But you have to enforce the law. And there are laws right now that say you can't do the stuff that I want to enforce. You can't do it. I mean, so that's the first thing. Absolutely. Quality of life, aggressive quality of life enforcement like this city hasn't seen in a long time. I don't want it to be like that forever. And then I think you have to immediately start chartering planes and trying to get as many of the migrants out of the city as possible. And I think you turn to private donors to fund some of that, because there would be problems and lawsuits immediately. And then, you know what? Sue us. Mm-hmm. Sue us. I'm not a big fan of Bill Bratton. And a lot of the things that he did, I remember, always an effort to avoid a lawsuit. Well, we could be sued. Okay, sue us. You know what I mean? We have lawyers too.
Right.
The other thing about him, he had a little playbook, you know, a little, comes in. He's only been in New York for a grand total of, I think, 4.5 years. People think he was commissioner for longer. He wasn't. Come in, badmouth everything that happened before you were there, right? And then the media will be like, oh, wow, he's so upfront with us. He's so open and willing to criticize police. Yeah, no kidding. It's self-serving. It's all about him. He's trying to create his own legacy. Everything was screwed up. I came in and just – anyway, that came to mind with this lawsuit thing. But he was very, very lax in many areas. And one of the things was, well, we don't want to get sued. Oh, for instance, the aftermath of the Eric Garner case. Remember Eric Garner when they chose not to prosecute Officer Pantaleo?
Yeah, Pantaleo, right.
Bratton and de Blasio allowed the protesters to take over roads and bridges. You don't do that. You don't let that happen. It's a public menace. And he did. And you know why? Because he didn't want to be sued. You didn't want the ACLU suing him? If the ACLU is not suing you, you're probably doing something wrong.
That's right. And the city has about 700 lawyers. They handle those cases.
Oh, Greg, any ambition to run for mayor?
I was flattering myself about a year ago, maybe longer, and thinking about it publicly, toying with the idea. But no. No, I can't do that for a number of reasons. I quite frankly think, though, that I could win an up or down vote, me versus Adams. With about a year and a half head start, I think I can win a fair fight. That was, to be honest, more than anything, I don't think it would be a fair election. I mean, with these unions and the ballots all over the place and how everything's been loosened up. And but if I thought I could win, I might have done it. But I don't think, and I do believe I could actually beat him, even me, with my Trump supporting nature. I think I could have beaten him in a citywide. Now, it would be tough as a Republican, obviously, but and I thought it's too bad we don't have that fusion party anymore. Not the fusion party, but the Liberal Party line. You know, Ray Harding and all that stuff. Remember?
Right. Yes.
Because the Republican brand in New York is something, you know. But so I have dismissed the idea.
We want to.
Well, keep us posted.
Okay.
No, you have a program starting in a little while, right?
Oh, but I could go on talking about myself forever with you guys. Thank you very much. It's so nice to be able to chat.
But one thing I'd like to point out, I think that with your background in terms of your father and the fact that you're a public figure and you're a reporter, you would be a great commissioner coming from the outside. No one can accuse you of having favoritism within the department. And, there have been commissioners from outside like McGuire and others who did a great job. And I think you would be a good candidate. So if Curtis becomes the mayor, I'm going to recommend to him that you be the police commissioner.
Curtis Lieber.
No, I don't think that's going to happen. But I'm not qualified for that job. And that's the thing. You want somebody qualified who knows the organization and won't be intimidated by the organization. You have to. If you have an agency to run, you got to run it, or the agency's going to run you.
That's right.
You bring in an outsider, but by the time he or she figures out how the place runs,
the term is
done.
over.
Yeah, right. I mean, that was one of the many great things about my dad. He could hit the ground running, obviously.
Sure. Captain?
Well, you've been a great interview for us, and we really appreciate it. And I think the world of your father. He's my idol. In all my years, my 40 years in the department, I have never seen such a good commissioner. And the great thing about him, he's the longest-serving commissioner in the history of the city of New York. Twice he was commissioner, and he did 12 years total, right?
Well, actually, almost 14 if you add it all up.
Right.
12 years under Bloomberg, and then the time under Dinkins, actually.
Right. I think it was a year and a half under Dinkins. So anyway, we want to thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
And Kevin?
I was promoted twice under your dad when he was the commissioner, second grade detective and first grade detective. So thank you, and thank your dad for that. And first of all, thank you very much for spending some time with us. I know you're very busy. You have a show to record or actually go live in a few minutes. But thank you very much. Any last word, Greg, on anything?
Real pleasure. Thank you very much. It is now, I know this will be viewed later, but it is September 16th, 2025. And I have no idea what the next 2 months are going to look like, 3 or 4 months. I really don't. God sees everything, and God knows what we're going through, but things happen according to his timing, not ours. And if you read the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, you know that it takes a long time sometimes for things to happen. You'll be in the wilderness for a while. I hope, pray that, I'm married and I have 2 young daughters, 2 and 4. I would like to see stability and freedom going forward. And I feel like both are really, really at risk right now. So, having said that, I am optimistic. I just don't think I just can't see this country slipping away yet.
I hope not. So, Captain?
No, he's got to go.
Well, Greg Kelly, thank you for being our guest today on Cop Talk. Folks, if you like what you hear, please subscribe to Cop Talk. And you can follow us on X. It used to formerly of Twitter. It used to be Twitter. Now it's called X. At Cop Talk WABC. That's at Cop Talk WABC. Until next time, God bless America. God bless law enforcement throughout the world. And God bless you. Until next time, be safe. Thank you.
Hello, folks. Larry Kudlow here. Pay attention, because China is leading the largest anti-American alliance since World War II. One that's already dumped U.S. bonds, grabbed 43 million acres of our farmland, and is plotting to dethrone the dollar. That's why IRA and 401k savers are protecting their savings with gold. Please go to freegoldguide.com/Kudlow or just call 800-621-3908 for your free gold guide on how to protect your wealth with gold 100% tax-free.